They appear without warning, no sound, no origin, no rules. Flickering shapes that rise from the ground or drift just above the treetops. Seen by railroad workers, farmers, scientists, and hikers. All say the same thing. The brown mountain lights don't want to be followed, but they do want to be seen. And once you've seen them, something begins to watch back. Brown Mountain doesn't ask for attention. It doesn't reach the towering heights of its Blue Ridge cousins. It sits, quiet and modest, like an old man on a porch, waiting, remembering. Tucked into the Pisgah National Forest of western North Carolina, Brown Mountain is unassuming at first glance. Rough trails thread through pine and oak. Ferns crowd the edges of old stone outcroppings. And just beyond the eastern overlook, a ridge dips like a shallow bowl. That's where the lights come. Locals know the name well, though few speak of it comfortably. Brown Mountain isn't a threat. Not exactly. It's more like a place that records things, without permission, without emotion. People go there with backpacks and walking sticks and good intentions. Some come back with stories. Some come back with something they can't name. A few don't come back at all. The earliest known stories of the lights are older than the borders around them. The Cherokee, who lived and moved through these lands, told of spirit fires that hovered and wandered without wind. Sul Kalu, the slant-eyed giant, was blamed in some versions. In others, the lights were considered the grieving spirits of a vanished war party. But always, the stories agreed on one thing. The lights were not natural, and they were not to be followed. In 1771, a German surveyor charting the mountain's ridgelines wrote in his notebook, "We saw the appearance of a lantern swinging in no hand. It turned and vanished, though no path lay before it." That note was rediscovered in an archive nearly 200 years later, filed under anomalous topographic observations. It was not the only one. During the late 1800s, logging crews in the area began reporting strange fires, too cold to burn, too fast to be followed. Lantern-sized globes that appeared at twilight and drifted just above the treetops. Some floated out from nowhere and paused midair. Others blinked in a pattern, as if communicating. A railroad worker in 1913 named Amos Lawton, who slept beside the tracks just below the mountain, gave one of the clearest early descriptions. "They come in pairs sometimes," he told a newspaper reporter, "but never more than 7. Never all at once. One will appear, then blink out. Then 2, side by side like eyes. Then nothing for an hour." What unsettled Amos wasn't just the lights. It was what followed. A set of tools went missing the morning after. The coffee pot, left warm over the embers, had turned cold. No footprints. No theft. Just a feeling that something had looked through the camp and moved on. That same year, the U.S. Geological Survey sent men with cameras and instruments to investigate. The official report called the phenomenon marsh gas, or automobile lights refracting through valley fog. But the locals scoffed. No one could explain how lights rose upward from the ground, or how they blinked in rhythm, or how, when watched for too long, the forest seemed to shift subtly, the sounds dimming, the sense of space growing thin. There are stories, passed down quietly in Burke and Caldwell counties, of people who ignored the feeling. A newlywed couple on their honeymoon hike in 1921, never found. A civilian Conservation Corps worker in 1938 left a pack and boots behind, as if stepping out for a moment. A college group in 1977, one student walked just 200 yards ahead to film the lights. The camera was found weeks later, but the tape had been ejected. The last recorded frame was a pale orb hovering just above the brush, flickering. What the mountain doesn't reveal in height, it keeps in memory. Some say the lights appear more frequently when the air is heavy and the silence deepens. Others say it's tied to emotion, grief, longing, regret. More than a few hikers report the same sequence. First, an odd stillness. Then a rustling, though no wind. Then the light. 1, maybe 2. Floating, then fading. And after that, the feeling that the mountain is waiting. Waiting for what is never clear. It doesn't pull people. It doesn't chase. But it seems to hold still in such a way that you begin to doubt your own movement. Some hikers walk for hours and find they've only gone a half mile. Others swear the trail loops have grown longer, adding turns that don't appear on any map. Folklorists began cataloging these testimonies in the 1980s, interviewing older residents and scanning decades of ranger logs. One motif returned often. The lights saw me before I saw it. A park ranger named Lyle Morris, who worked the Wilson Creek area for over 30 years, gave a recorded interview in 1996. He leaned close to the microphone and said, "It's not that they're ghosts, and it's not that they're machines. It's more like, the mountain is remembering who came by, and the lights are how it does the remembering." Even now, tourists come with phones and thermal cameras, hoping to catch the lights on film. Some succeed, many don't, and a few leave hurriedly, silent, eyes wide, claiming they saw more than lights. They saw figures standing just beyond the glare, unmoving, shadowed, as if something had climbed out of the light and chose not to leave. But the mountain never confirms. It simply waits. Always the same slope. Always the same hush just before dusk. Always ready for one more pair of eyes to find it and wonder. The mountain has waited for centuries. It can wait a little longer. The lights don't want to be understood, Amos Lawton once wrote. They just want to be seen. And maybe they want to see us too. There's a place just below the eastern ridgeline of Brown Mountain. Locals call it the Hollow. It isn't marked on trail maps. No signposts. No warnings. But ask any ranger who's worked the area long enough, and they'll nod toward it with quiet reluctance. It's where the lights go, they'll say, and where people shouldn't. The Hollow isn't a dramatic landscape. No cliffs, no waterfalls, no scenic vistas. Just a low depression ringed with pines and laurel thickets, where the air smells heavier and sounds behave strangely. Footsteps seem to echo differently there, muffled one moment, then crisp and clear the next. Birds rarely sing near it. Sometimes, a fog will settle into the basin and stay for days, unmoving even in high wind. That's where most of the early stories come from. In 1863, a Confederate scout named Eli Braithwell crossed Brown Mountain on a solo mission to deliver messages between battalions. His journal, which survived though he did not, includes a quiet note on his final night. There are lights on the ridge. One red, two white. They don't flicker like fire. They swing, but no man swings them. I shall go see if they're Union scouts. But I feel watched. His body was never recovered. But in 1904, his rusted belt buckle was found deep in the hollow, half buried in a tree root. No bones, no gear, just the buckle. Others came after him. Hunters in the 1880s claimed to see lights moving through the trees, not above them, passing behind trunks, but never casting shadow. A letter written by a preacher in 1902, now kept in the Burke County archives, describes a night camping with his sons. The boys saw them first. Said they looked like candles floating chest high. I counted 4. When I raised my voice, they dimmed but didn't vanish. And when we began to pray, the lights separated and circled us, slowly, like curious moths that didn't care about fire. He left the mountain early the next morning. His letter ends with a line written in a different hand, his wife's. Reverend Hargrove no longer leads services. He wakes in silence and speaks only to the fire. There's a pattern in the hollow. Lights don't just appear, they drift. Not fast, not aggressive, but always toward something. In 1916, a logging crew set up camp just north of the basin. One night, a young man named Cyrus Tiller wandered off with a lantern to gather water. He didn't return. His tracks were found, then lost, then picked up again, but this time spaced wider apart, as if he'd begun running. The last sign of him was the lantern itself, still lit, placed gently at the edge of the hollow. More recently, in 1997, 2 amateur photographers camped in the area, hoping to capture time-lapse footage of the phenomenon. One of them, a woman named Lena Hargreaves, recorded a personal audio journal. On the 3rd night, her voice was calm, measured even. The lights came closer tonight. I think they know we're watching. One hovered low to the ground, then blinked 3 times and drifted to the left. I followed. I know I shouldn't have, but it felt like an invitation. Her friend found her the next morning standing ankle-deep in the creek, barefoot, camera submerged in water, staring toward the mountain with a strange expression. She never explained what she saw. She never returned to Brown Mountain. Folklorists have long tried to interpret the symbolism of the lights, some linking them to ancient burial customs, others to atmospheric plasma or ball lightning. But none can explain the behavior. The way the lights linger near humans but retreat when approached. The way they never seem to repeat the same pattern twice. The way some people walk away changed, quiet, uneasy, touched by something they can't describe. And always, the same motif recurs: light as message, light as memory, light as warning. One elder in the nearby town of Linville said it best: "Those lights aren't meant to be followed. They're meant to be understood, but not by us." The hollow has no signs. It doesn't need them. The mountain knows who enters, and the lights know who stays too long. In that quiet, fog-laced depression below the ridge, time folds a little. Sounds bend. And for a few breath-held moments, the forest waits to see who will listen and who will disappear without a sound. There's a line on old trail maps that doesn't exist anymore. It wound gently below the eastern overlook, looping through rhododendron thickets and past a narrow creek. In faded ink, it was once labeled simply, "Observation Trail, 1.2 miles." Today, no such trail is listed. The forest grew it closed, or the mountain took it back. That's where most of the disappearances began. From the 1920s onward, the ranger logs at Linville Gorge and Mortimer Station record a strange pattern. People vanish not in storms, not in ravines, but in calm weather and on gentle terrain. And more often than not, they disappear after reporting the lights. A troop leader from Raleigh, 1932. A pair of honeymooners, 1954. A solo hiker named Glenn Morley, 1968. All left notes, or radioed, or were last seen just before dusk. And in each case, witnesses described curious lights hovering near the ridge or descending softly into the hollow. Glenn's final transmission was recorded by a nearby fire tower operator. "There's one light now. It's pacing me. Not in the air, on the ground. I think it's waiting." He was never found, but his compass was buried in moss, needles still spinning. Some hikers return, but not quite whole. In 1984, a woman named Clara Pearson was found 36 hours after vanishing on a solo hike near the same ridge. She emerged barefoot, with no injuries but a blank stare and dirt under her fingernails. When asked where she had been, she answered softly, "I followed the light, but it didn't go anywhere. It just stayed, like it was watching to see what I'd do." She wouldn't talk after that. She moved to New Hampshire 6 weeks later. Her tent and gear were recovered, but her journal was missing. Her walking stick, curiously, was found wedged upright in the ground, as if planted deliberately. Park rangers began to notice the pattern. 3 witnesses describing the same light sequence: 1 light hovering still, then 2 blinking in rhythm, then silence, followed by disorientation. 3 separate accounts of losing time. 3 notes left behind, each mentioning the word different. The mountain looked different in the morning. The trees were in different places. The sun came up in the wrong direction. By 1990, several of the older rangers had passed down quiet advice to the newer ones. Never in writing, never on the radio: don't hike alone. Don't hike after dusk. And if you see the lights, don't speak their name. That last part, especially, was taken seriously, as if naming them made them aware of you in return. In 2003, a college anthropology group received permission to spend 3 nights in the Brown Mountain area to study local folklore. Of the 7 students, 1, Jeremy Art, claimed to have seen a figure inside the light. Not beside it, not near it, inside. He described it in his report. It was as if the light had depth, like looking into a pool, and something was standing at the bottom, not moving, watching back. His sketch showed a silhouette with long arms and a neck that seemed to tilt in a strange, fluid angle. 3 weeks after submitting his report, Jeremy dropped out of the program and moved abroad. His professors never heard from him again. It's easy to dismiss this as folklore, or madness, or coincidence. But when the reports span decades, when voices echo across time saying the same quiet thing, it becomes harder to ignore. Brown Mountain does not shout. It doesn't lure with storms or screams. Instead, it waits. And when someone gets too close to understanding, too close to the lights, it simply removes them. No violence, no struggle, just absence. Sometimes, a hat is found beside a stone. Sometimes, a watch still ticking in a patch of dry grass. But the person is gone, without trail, without sound, without goodbye. As if the mountain keeps what it needs, and lets the rest drift back into the world, changed. There's a phrase whispered among locals, passed like a secret from porch to porch. It doesn't come from books. It doesn't appear in any official ranger guidelines. But if you spend enough time near Brown Mountain, especially in the late months when the fog stays longer, you'll hear it spoken low, often with a hand resting on the table or a glance over the shoulder. 3 rules. Break 1, and the mountain notices. Break 2, and it remembers you. Break all 3, and it keeps you. They call it the rule of 3. And though no one claims to have made the rules, no one truly doubts them either. The first rule is simple. Don't watch the lights for more than a count of 10. Not allowed. Not in your head. Just 10 heartbeats. Any longer, and people say your sense of distance begins to shift. You stop feeling where you are. The trees lean wrong. The trail behind you looks unfamiliar. A strange quietness settles in. The kind of silence that doesn't just fall, but spreads. The second rule, don't follow the lights downhill. Even if they look close. Even if they seem to hover just beyond reach. Even if they move slowly, invitingly, like they're leading you to something important. That's the mistake. That's the lie. Downhill always leads to the hollow. And the hollow is not a place people leave easily. And the third rule, the one that chills even the most skeptical hikers, don't answer if you hear your name. Especially not if it comes from the dark. Especially not if it sounds familiar. I heard my brother's voice, said a camper in 2011. He wasn't with me. He was back in Asheville. But the voice was his. It called from the trees, clear as day. I almost answered. Almost. That camper turned back immediately. He made it down the trail by morning, pale and shivering but unharmed. 2 months later, he reported hearing his name whispered again, in his sleep, in his hallway, in the space between waking and dreaming. Some stories say the lights call out only after they've been watched too long. Others claim it's the lights themselves that learn the name and use it. The earliest recorded mention of the rule of 3 appears in a field journal from 1948, belonging to a forestry intern named Edward Lang. He was stationed at the base of Brown Mountain for a 6-week environmental study. One of the final entries in his log reads, "The old ranger here, McCleary, I think, warned me with the strangest advice. Don't count too long. Don't go where the light leads. Don't answer if you're not sure who's speaking." He said the mountain doesn't forget a voice once it hears it. Edward disappeared on the 5th week. His tent was undisturbed. His maps left open. His boots were placed side by side beside a cold fire ring. No sign of struggle. Only one odd detail. A small stack of flat stones near the creek, each etched with a different symbol, spirals, crosses, and one that looked like an eye. By the 1960s, several rescue teams had their own superstitions. Some refused to search at night, no matter how urgent the call. Others carried small bells or mirrors, claiming they disrupted the rhythm of the place. Still others told newcomers never to say a name aloud while inside the forest, especially not the name of the missing. "It's like giving the mountain permission," said one retired ranger. "Once it knows who you're looking for, it starts looking back." In 1989, a radio transmission caught the attention of emergency services. A woman's voice, calm but halting, repeated the same line 3 times before the signal cut out. "Don't follow the light. Don't follow the light. It's not leading you out." The search team traced the source to an abandoned fire lookout post. The equipment had long since rusted. No batteries, no power, but the signal had been real. And no one has since explained how it broadcast that night. In interviews with folklorists, locals describe a kind of rhythm to the way the lights behave. A retired schoolteacher named Maureen Webb recalled an encounter in the 1970s. It was just after sunset. "I saw one light, bright white, like a gas lantern, but it didn't flicker. It pulsed. I counted, without meaning to, 10 pulses. Then it went dark. And in that quiet, I swear I heard someone behind me whisper, 'Maureen.' I ran. I didn't look back. I don't think I would have come back if I had." These experiences aren't shared loudly. They're offered like confessions. Not because of shame, but because of something deeper, respect, maybe, or fear of naming what shouldn't be named. Even modern hikers, those with GPS, headlamps, high-powered phones, report moments of uncertainty. Time that slips, trails that fade, and lights that appear precisely when you think you're lost, pulsing like silent beacons just far enough away to tempt you into forgetting what the rules were in the first place. A documentary crew in 2008 tried to recreate light encounters based on local testimonies. They brought drone-mounted cameras, night vision gear, and sound equipment. The first night, nothing happened. The second, Two members of the team saw a single light appear above the ridge and begin a slow descent. They followed it. Only one returned. The footage was corrupted, static, and strange color shifts, but one clip survived. A figure standing still on the trail, illuminated from behind by a floating white light. No sound, no movement, just stillness, as though frozen mid-thought. The figure slowly turns toward the camera. But the face is blank, unreadable, like something unfinished. The clip ends there. No one can say for sure what was filmed, but the surviving crew member reportedly wakes most nights at 3:11 a.m. and claims to hear someone calling her name from outside her window. And still, the three rules remain. Not printed, not explained, just spoken, again and again, like Folklore's version of a safety net. Don't count the lights too long. Don't go where they lead. Don't answer what sounds like someone you know. Because if you do, you may not come back as yourself. You may not come back at all. And if you do come back, you may carry something with you. Something that still watches and still waits. They came with machines. With logbooks, lenses, wires. They came believing that what flickered over Brown Mountain could be measured, cataloged, explained, reduced. But Brown Mountain has never been kind to those who arrive with certainty. The first scientific expedition arrived in 1913, sent by the U.S. Geological Survey. At the time, local newspapers were filled with dramatic headlines. Ghost lights puzzle scientists. Rail workers claim strange orbs in the sky. The lights had become so widely reported that the government took notice. The team, led by Drive W.J. Humphreys, carried prisms, weather balloons, and barometers. Their mission: determine whether the lights were caused by atmospheric reflections, headlights bouncing off valley fog, or brush fires from distant ridges. They stayed 3 weeks. They recorded temperature, wind, light angles. They wrote detailed logs. And then they left, quietly. Their final report concluded the lights were likely the result of misidentified man-made light sources subject to illusion and refraction. But locals didn't buy it, because they had seen the lights appear on cloudless nights, without roads, before headlights even existed. And more strangely, one of the assistants on that trip, a man named Charles Ebner, never submitted his field notes. But in a letter found after his death, he described something the report left out. The light we watched from the overlook wasn't reflecting. It moved behind the trees. Not through them, behind. And when I tried to photograph it, the shutter clicked, but no image remained. Just black, like the light refused to be captured. In the decades that followed, others tried. NASA scientists visited in the 1970s during a wave of renewed interest in atmospheric phenomena. They brought infrared cameras, EMF detectors, and magnetometers. They camped on ridges and valleys, attempting triangulation. Their approach was clinical, exacting. But the gear didn't always cooperate. Thermal signatures vanished. Compass needles spun lazily in still air. Voice recorders played back hours of silence, except for one moment, repeated across multiple devices, when a whisper bled through. 7. One of the team leads, Dr. Nathan Hollis, left the field abruptly on the second week. He never gave a reason. He never returned to Brown Mountain. In a 1981 interview, he said only, "I felt like I was being counted, watched, not like prey, not even like a guest, more like data." Other agencies followed. Unmarked vans parked on the service roads near Linville. Men in plain clothing hiked with odd equipment, refusing to answer questions. They left no names, no reports, only cigarette butts and boot prints. And then there were the anomalies. In 1992, a technician monitoring magnetic fields for a university project recorded a pulse, not unlike a heartbeat, occurring at exact intervals across 4 nights. Each pulse aligned with witness reports of lights rising from the hollow. The technician, curious, returned alone for a 5th night. He left his notes in the tent. He was never seen again. His equipment was found still recording, battery drained, but the final logged entry was strange, a sudden spike, not in magnetism, but sound. Yet when the audio was played, it contained only silence. A deep, unnatural silence. Not absence, but something that had erased presence. By the early 2000s, paranormal researchers had taken notice. They brought ghost hunting tools, spirit boxes, motion sensors, night vision rigs. They camped near the ridges. They streamed live. They made jokes. until they stopped. In one of the most circulated pieces of footage, since removed from several platforms, a researcher named Sasha C. can be seen tracking a soft, white orb through the tree. The video is grainy, but clear enough. It's just floating, she says on camera. Not like a balloon. It's holding position, maybe 10 feet off the ground. Her tone changes. Wait, it's not light. It's seeing me. Then static. Not sudden. Not loud. Just slow static. The kind that creeps in like fog. Not the sound of a broken device, but a device that has slowly forgotten how to hear. Sasha returned, but she quit the field. She now refuses all interviews. In her last online post, she wrote, "Some things measure us back. Some things know how long you've been looking. What makes Brown Mountain different isn't just the lights. It's how those lights react to attention. Watch them, and they blink back. Study them, and they shift. Photograph them, and the camera malfunctions." An astrophotographer in 2018 wrote, "Every time I focused, the light was one step to the left. And the longer I tried to center it, the more it felt like I was being drawn off trail. My feet were moving before I realized." And still, the men with tools continue to arrive. Newer, smarter devices. LiDAR, drones, AI-assisted sensors. But the result is always the same. Equipment fails. Witnesses vanish. And the light endures. Brown Mountain is not hostile, but it does not want to be solved. It is older than weather stations, older than roads, older than the need to explain things away. What the scientists forgot, what the locals never did, is that some things on this earth are not broken puzzles waiting to be fixed. They are patterns, living ones, that blink and wait, and blink again. If you spend enough time on Brown Mountain, not just passing through, but listening, you begin to notice something deeper than the lights. Beneath the flickers, beneath the stories of vanishing hikers and faulty compasses, there's another thread that ties everything together. A pattern, but not one you hear. It's the pattern inside the silence. The lights are the spectacle, but the mountain's real language is stillness. And the silence? It comes first, always before the light. Over the years, hundreds of witnesses have described the same moment, a stillness that falls like snow. No birdsong, no insects, not even the sound of your own breathing, somehow lost in the weight of it. It was like the forest stopped waiting, said a ranger in 1979, as if something had arrived, and everything else held its breath. That moment of quiet, uncanny, unnatural, is always the first sign. Then the light comes, hovering, pulsing. But it's not just visual, it's felt. Those who've seen the lights up close speak of a kind of vibration, subtle, deep, just below the surface of perception, like standing near a train that hasn't passed yet, or a storm that hasn't broken. In 1995, an audio technician named Walter Hoyt set up a parabolic microphone rig on the East Ridge. He wasn't hunting ghosts. He was studying natural silence, the frequency gaps left in untouched forests at night. What he found was something else entirely. Each time the lights appeared, his microphones registered a frequency dip, a brief moment where every wavelength dropped flat, as though something had swallowed the sound whole. No static, no wind, just absence. It's not that there's no sound, he wrote in his report. It's that something has replaced sound with its own version of quiet. And then, a rhythm. That's where the stories become consistent in the most unsettling way. People don't just see the lights. They begin to count them, even without meaning to. 3 pulses. Pause. 2 pulses. Pause. Then a long, slow flicker. Again and again, across decades. A boy in 1964. A hiker in 1987. A wildlife researcher in 2002. All unaware of each other. All describing the same sequence. Folklorists believe it may be a form of communication. A language not made of words or symbols, but of timing. Pulse. Space. Pulse. A code in silence. One of the strangest cases came in 2013 when a blind man named Everett Thomas visited the Overlook with his niece. He had never seen the lights, couldn't. But that night, he turned to her and asked, "What color are they tonight?" "White," she answered, "and kind of bluish." He said. "They're quieter when they're blue. That's when they're listening." When pressed, he explained that he could hear them, not as sound, but as shifts in the emptiness around him. It's like the space folds a little when they get close. Your thoughts feel heavier, like you're being considered. He described the same rhythm. 3. Pause. 2. Pause. Flicker. But he didn't call it a pattern. It's not repeating. It's responding. That idea, that the lights are listening back, is one of the more chilling threads in this long weave of stories. In 2006, a deaf teenager named Maria Alvarez recorded something similar. Unable to hear the silence herself, she began to feel it. She wrote in her journal, "When the lights came, I felt a beat in my chest, not mine. It didn't match my heart. It was like someone knocking, but from the inside of the air." She started tapping her foot in time with the pulses. 3, 2, flicker. It matched what her brother, watching with night vision, had seen. Later, when her family played her the footage, she asked, "Why does the light stop blinking every time I step?" No one had an answer. Was it coincidence or recognition? In folklore, patterns are a form of power. The repetition of words, of shapes, of movement, these are the tools used to summon or bind. But what if the mountain's lights aren't performing a pattern for us? What if we are being drawn into theirs? A linguist once proposed that the lights may not be communicating, but calibrating. That every visitor, every viewer, becomes a variable, and the pulses adjust themselves accordingly. They aren't saying anything, he wrote. They're measuring how we listen. In 2018, a woman who had never spoken of her time on Brown Mountain finally agreed to an interview. She described watching 3 lights float through a distant tree line, and how they stopped, suspended midair, when she began humming softly to herself. "They moved with the notes," she whispered. "Not toward me, not away. Just shifted slightly, like they were tuning to the melody. When she stopped humming, they blinked rapidly, once, then vanished. It felt like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking," she said. Even skeptics admit, the lights don't behave like mere phenomena. They don't follow weather. They don't follow terrain. They follow attention. And inside that attention, they leave their mark, not always with fear, but with a rearrangement of perception. Hikers return with no memory of time past. Campers wake in different positions than they slept in. Photographs show trees out of alignment. Small details shifted from reality. It's as though the mountain resets itself while no one is watching, or while everyone is watching too closely. The silence that surrounds the lights is not absence. It's intention. It is the pause before a sentence you will never understand. It is the breath before an answer you are not ready to hear. Brown Mountain is not loud. It does not speak, but it does respond. And its responses are etched in flicker and hush, rhythm and void. You do not follow the pattern. The pattern follows you. Fog is common in the Appalachians. It rolls in quiet and thick, softening everything. Rocks become shapes. Trees become silhouettes. Paths vanish. It's not unusual, until you're standing still on a trail you thought you knew, and you realize the fog isn't moving. It's waiting. On Brown Mountain, fog is more than weather. It's a threshold. Many of the most disturbing accounts come not from stormy nights or sudden lights, but from slow-moving mornings where the air never clears, where something is felt long before it's seen. The fog was heavy, recalled a ranger in 2015, but not damp. It didn't feel like air, more like insulation, like something between me and the world. He'd been hiking a maintenance trail near the southern basin, alone. No lights that day, just fog so dense his radio began to lose signal. Then the quiet came, that same impossible stillness described again and again. Birdsong cut short, breath loud in the ears. And then, movement. He said it wasn't fast, just a shift in the fog, as if something had stepped sideways through it. Not toward him, not away, just there, not shaped like anything he could name, but unmistakably present. "I saw a shoulder," he said. "That's the best word. Not a body, not a person, just a shoulder shape, like something had turned its back, or was just turning toward me." He stood frozen for a long time, unsure if what he saw was part of the fog, or using it. That encounter wasn't unique. A hiker named Denica Price described an experience from 2007 that echoed the same imagery. "I was on the East Overlook. It was around 4 a.m. The fog had filled the entire valley below. I started to see the lights, 3 of them, sitting low like campfires but glowing cold. And then, I noticed shapes between them. Not lights, not smoke, shapes. She thought they were trees at first, but the lights moved, and the shapes moved with them. Slow, upright, not flickering, just waiting inside the fog. Danica turned back before sunrise. She doesn't hike anymore. The Watchers, that's what some call them now. Not ghosts. Not animals. Just presences that make themselves known not with noise, not with threat, but with awareness. A fog settles. A light appears. And something stands just outside the edge of what you're willing to see. In 1999, an amateur photographer named Thomas Kent set up a long-exposure camera facing the ridge. He captured dozens of images that night. Most showed nothing, but one frame, just one, recorded 3 vertical forms, each nearly identical in height, blurred but unmistakably upright, standing beneath a hovering light. They weren't lights themselves. They cast no glow. They absorbed it. Thomas submitted the photo to local news. It was dismissed as motion blur. He never returned to Brown Mountain. In his final blog entry, he wrote, "You think you're alone, and then you realize you never were. Not up there. Something stands still while you move." In earlier folklore, before the name Brown Mountain Lights was widely used, the Catawba people spoke of Watchers of the Hollow, beings who stood in the veil between life and death, between thought and memory. "They guard places we were never meant to find," said one tribal elder. "They don't follow. They don't chase. They just witness," which, in a way, is more disturbing than any pursuit. There's no malice, only observation, and the unshakable feeling that whatever lives in the fog has seen you before and is now watching to see what you'll do next. Some reports speak of figures only visible in reflection. A hiker cleaning their glasses sees someone standing behind them in the lens, only to turn and find nothing. Campers report seeing outlines in misted car windows. One woman, brushing fog off a tent window, claimed to see her own face staring back, but wrong. Slightly off. Eyes wider. Smile faint. Not quite hers. She packed and left within the hour. One of the most credible modern accounts came from a retired Air Force pilot, Mark Riverton, in 2019. He had camped alone on Brown Mountain, determined to record the lights with precision. Instead, he captured something else. His field recorder, which ran all night, picked up a steady rhythm of breathing, not his own. It starts low, distant, then grows closer over hours. It never gasps. It never speaks. Just breathing. Slow, deliberate, too steady to be sleep. At one point, the recorder captured Mark waking up. "Who's there?" he asks. Silence. The breathing continues. Then a low sound, barely audible. Not words, but a kind of inhaled whisper, like something drawing a shape in its throat. When Mark played it back days later, he said the silence recognized itself. "It felt like the silence from that night knew I was listening again," he said. "And it didn't care." That's what unnerves people most. The Watchers don't react. They don't flee or attack. They stand and observe. They see you, all the way down. Brown Mountain is a place that doesn't forget footsteps, where fog isn't just weather, it's a curtain. And sometimes, the curtain moves slightly, as if to let something look through. You don't hear them. You feel them first. That presence, that breath not your own, that sensation of being named in silence. And once you feel that, no other silence feels clean again. Most people think the Brown Mountain Lights are a local mystery, something that belongs to the ridgeline and dies at the tree-line. Something you hike toward, photograph from a safe overlook, and leave behind. But some stories say the lights follow. Not in the way headlights follow you on a dark road. Not in the way you feel watched by an owl in the trees. No, the lights don't trail you. They remember you. And they remind you, gently, persistently, until home doesn't feel like home anymore. There are accounts, quiet ones, rarely shared, of people seeing the lights again after they've returned. Not at Brown Mountain, not anywhere near it, but outside their homes, in parking lots, through windows. "I saw them first on the ridge in '92, said one man from Winston-Salem. "A soft white orb, hovering behind a pine tree. Thought it was beautiful. Then I went home and forgot about it. 3 nights later, I was walking my dog and saw the same orb on the sidewalk across the street. I blinked. It was gone. But after that, every few weeks, just for a moment, it'd show up again. In reflections. At the end of the hallway. Like it wasn't done with me." He stopped talking about it after 2 interviews. His wife said he'd taken to sleeping with the lights on and the blinds closed. This kind of lingering presence isn't part of the tourism brochures. It doesn't make for a good ranger talk. But it's there, in the forums, in old letters, in the margins of local books written by people who moved away and never quite felt they had. I brought something back with me, one woman wrote. Not a ghost, not a curse. More like an attention, like something was still tuned into me. Folklore rarely ends at the place of encounter. In true folk horror fashion, the boundary between location and psyche begins to blur. What begins as a moment, one strange night on a ridge, starts to echo. Lights become eyes become thoughts, and thoughts begin to feel foreign. A teenager who visited Brown Mountain with her family in 2008 later described dreams where the lights flickered behind her eyelids. She'd wake gasping, not from fear, but from a soundless pressure, like being stared at by something too big to be seen fully. It was like it knew I didn't understand, she said, but it didn't want to hurt me. Just stay with me, like a slow drip on the inside of my skull. When asked to draw what she saw in those dreams, she produced a pattern of 7 circles, no two alike, arranged in a loose spiral. 7. Again. One of the consistent motifs across the years. 7 pulses. 7 lights. 7 days between sightings. 7 steps between the dream and the window. Some believe the number matters. Some think it's arbitrary. But those who experience the afterglow of the mountains say the same thing. The lights aren't gone. They're just waiting somewhere nearby. In 1986, a Forest Service volunteer named Lillian Voss moved to Tennessee after years of living near Linville. She'd spent much of her life close to the mountain. She'd seen the lights twice. Once with her father as a child, once alone as an adult. She didn't fear them. She respected them, until she started waking at 2:17 a.m. every night for 6 months. Always to the same thing, a soft glow under her bedroom door. Her hallway had no lights, no windows. When she opened the door, it would fade. She changed houses. It continued. It's not just that they follow you, she said. It's that they remember you were curious, that you stared too long. It's important to note, none of these stories involve violence. No deaths, no possession, no madness, just presence. The kind of presence that doesn't explain itself. That doesn't go away, even when you beg it to. Because it's not haunting you. It's observing you still, as if the light lodged something in you. A shard, an awareness, a link. And once it's there, certain moments begin to feel off. Mirrors fog when they shouldn't. Rooms feel crowded when empty. Old electronics turn on. Lights flicker, not in fear, but in recognition. In 2004, a woman in Boone reported that her young son had started drawing circles everywhere. Chalk, paper, even carved lightly into wood. When asked why, he said, "I'm practicing how to blink." She didn't understand until she found one of his notebooks. The drawings weren't random. They were timed. 3 circles, then 2, then a long, open spiral. She had never taken him to Brown Mountain. She swore they'd never talked about it. And yet, one morning, he looked up at her across breakfast and asked, "What do you think they see when they look at us?" That was the final straw. They moved. But she still watches the porch light every night, just in case it flickers back. Perhaps the most unsettling part of these stories is that no one ever says the lights are evil. They aren't malevolent. They don't chase or harm. But they linger. And in their lingering, they change something. Not outwardly, not dramatically, but deeply, quietly. You start leaving more lights on. You start closing mirrors. You stop listening too hard in the stillness. Because once you've been seen, truly seen, you begin to wonder if you're still alone. Even when you're sure you are. Brown Mountain is not a place. It's a relationship. A slow one. A patient one. And sometimes, it doesn't end at the trailhead. Sometimes, the lights come with you. Not to scare you. Not to follow you. But to continue watching. We always ask the same question. No matter how old the mystery. No matter how many people vanish. Or how many stories are whispered across decades. Or how many lights blink in the night sky. We always come back to this. What are they? The scientists say they are plasma discharges. Ball lightning. Geomagnetic disturbances caused by piezoelectric quartz. They bring instruments, graphs, sensors. They publish reports. But the lights still blink. Still appear when the machines are off. Still vanish just before the shutter clicks. The folklorists have other answers. They talk of spirit fires, lanterns of mourning warriors, gateways where the land is thin and memory slips through. They mention old rituals, unfinished stories, places that never stopped listening. And the people who've seen the lights, really seen them, offer no explanations at all. Just impressions, moments, stillnesses they can't unfeel. They aren't what we think, said a man who saw them twice. They're not visitors. They're residents. We're the guests. And that's perhaps the only answer that fits. The lights do not behave like invaders. They do not demand. They do not speak. They simply are, appearing and vanishing like the breath of the mountain itself. And in between those appearances, something waits. Watches. Records. Throughout every chapter of this long history, there are certain constants. Not just the flickering, not just the silence, but the feeling of being evaluated, not judged, not threatened, but measured. It was like the light was deciding something, said a hiker. Like it was choosing whether to remember me. So maybe the question isn't what the lights are. Maybe the better question is, what are we to them? Because the deeper you go into the stories, the more the fear changes shape. At first, it's fear of the unknown. Then, fear of being followed. But finally, it becomes something quieter, more unsettling. The fear that the mountain knows something about you that you don't. And that it's watching, not because it's curious, but because it's waiting for you to understand something you've forgotten. Brown Mountain is not a mystery that wants solving. It's a presence that wants witnessing. The lights don't lead anywhere. They don't beckon. They simply show up and see who notices. The flicker pattern, 3, pause, 2, pause, spiral, isn't just a code. It's a rhythm. And rhythms aren't explanations. They're invitations. To pay attention. To notice the shift. To accept that some truths don't fit into words. So what are they? Perhaps the lights are memories made visible. Echoes of something ancient the land refuses to let go. Surveillance of a kind we don't understand. Neither mechanical nor divine, but something older, more neutral, more precise. A living language expressed in silence and motion that responds to emotion, presence, attention. Or maybe they are simply what remains when a place becomes conscious of being watched and learns to watch back. Because if there's one thread that binds every account, every ranger's log, every whispered story, every photograph that came out black, it's this: the lights see you. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. They see you arrive. They note where you stand, how long you stare, whether you follow, whether you run, whether you return, and in some rare cases, whether you take them with you. What are they? Maybe they're the mountain's way of remembering, of keeping score, of holding on to those who came close to understanding, even if just for a second. Because when the fog falls just right, and the trail grows too quiet, and your own heartbeat begins to feel like it's not entirely yours anymore, you start to feel it too. That slow blink, that watching rhythm, that quiet tallying. The flicker in the trees is not a trick. The pulse behind your thoughts is not random. It's the mountain, still blinking, still breathing, still here. And if you've ever stood beneath the ridge and watched the hollow glow, then the question may not be what the lights are. It may be, what are you now after seeing them? If that gave you chills, like the video, share it with someone who sleeps with the lights off and hit subscribe, or the next photo might have you in it. Tap the bell. The next story drops soon.